What's up, AP Stats? Chapter 12 notes, Part 1. With this chapter, we will be dealing with types of studies. And the main two for AP Stats are observational studies and experiments. And a couple similarities, mainly differences between these two. And it's very important to recognize the difference between the two. So let's start with observational studies. In an observational study, we measure or survey members of a sample without trying to affect them. So this would be the definition of an observational study. We measure or survey members of a sample without trying to affect them. Mostly what we've been doing so far is we've talked about these sample surveys. A sample survey, if I went up to a bunch of group of people and I asked them questions and I gathered data from them, that'd be a sample survey. That's an observational study. You're literally just studying what you observe. You're not trying to change anything. You're merely observing. However, in an experiment, we assign what's called treatments. This is a vocab word which we'll kind of get more into later in the unit. We assign treatments to people or groups and observe the results. So in an experiment, there's more control and you are actually trying to affect part of the group, part of your little sample there. We'll come back to experiments here in a second. But going back to observational studies, so we measure or survey members of a sample without trying to affect them. For example, taking a sample survey and asking people about something that you're trying to gather for the bigger population. This would be, think of like the present tense. Not present tense, just present. You can also do what's called a retrospective study. And if you see the root word retro, think of it like the past. This is where you somehow study people in the past, something that's like already happened. So maybe I wanted to collect data from the 1980s and the 1990s, and I want to see, I don't know, something about their heights in the 1980s and the 1990s. That would be a retrospective study. And then there's this idea that you can also ask participants to take a sample to help you study something in the future. That would be a prospective study. So these are all observational studies. Some good vocab here. With experiments, we will deal more about the different ways we can change an experiment next week. For now, all I need you guys to know is observational study is simply when we're just observing people in our sample, and in an experiment we're trying to assign specific treatments. So we're actually trying to change things. And I'll give you examples here in a second. Before we get to those examples, I would like to talk about why we do experiments and why would we do an observational studies. Because these are very different. In an observational study, we do this. So I'm going to say the purpose is to make generalizations about population. All right, this is key. In an observational study, the only thing you can do is make a generalization about a population. And the purpose for an experiment, we want to establish what's called causality. And this is basically causation, right? We want to establish a cause and effect. Maybe that makes a little more sense here. Cause and effect relationship. So if an experiment is done correctly, we can actually say, hey, this causes that. Or in an observational study, it's just generalizations. So let's do a quick example. Does it make sense? So let's say for both of these that we wanted to look at sleeping patterns and how TV affects sleeping patterns. I know some of us like to sleep with TV on, some of us don't care. I personally need the TV off. But let's say I wanted to do an observational study. What I could do is let me give an example. I could do a current sample survey. So I want to ask people. So sample survey of, I don't know, maybe I asked 50 people. Sample survey of 50 people where I ask if they sleep with TV or not, with TV on or not. And then I actually want to see okay, and then how many hours of sleep do you get? Would you consider your sleep good? So not only do I ask if they sleep with TV on or not, then I ask questions to determine how good of sleep they get. Okay? So I gather 50 people, and maybe from those 50 people, maybe 40 of them actually sleep with the TV off, and only 10 of them sleep with the TV on. That's what could happen, right? Because we don't know. We're just asking them for what they do. We're just observing what they do. And when I say we make generalizations, if we did this survey and we found that generally the people that slept with the TV on, they got fewer hours of sleep, the generalization we could make is that for the bigger population, that in general, people who sleep with the TV on, they don't get as much quality sleep as those who sleep with it off. That's what a generalization is. Now I'll go through what an experiment for the similar situation would look like. So again, we're trying to determine how sleeping with the TV on affects sleep. So in an experiment, we assign 2 treatments, and let's say we had, what do we have in the last one, 50? Let's say we assign treatments to 2 groups of 20. These would be called experimental units, but we'll talk about that next week. So we assign 2 treatments to 2 groups of 20. The first group sleeps with no TV, while the second group sleeps with TV on. All right, so we are controlling that. Maybe we say, okay, they're going to do this for a period of 2 weeks. So maybe we say, like, after 2 weeks, we analyze their sleeping, let's say sleeping efficacy. So how well they slept. So in the experiment, we actually pick, or we randomly assign the groups. Right? We're saying this group is going to sleep with no TV, this group is going to sleep with TV on. And what this helps us do, because we're actually controlling something, we're able to establish a cause and effect relationship. So at the very end of this study, and if after looking at like the data, and if we found that like, hey, that first group that they didn't have the TV on, they got much more quality sleep, while the second group that slept with the TV on, they didn't really sleep that well. We can establish a cause and effect relationship. We can start saying, it appears that sleeping with TV on tends to cause worse sleep. Where over here, generalization, again, is different than cause and effect. I would say that as a stats teacher, I see these two mixed up pretty often, just when I'm like reading articles online or whatever. So very important that we understand the difference between cause and effect and generalizations. All right, what we have next here are just 6 examples, really just identifying, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 examples identifying what we have here. So looking at problem number 1, we're talking about drinking tea right before bedtime. So a study took a random sample of adults and asked them about their bedtime habits. The data showed that people who drink a cup of tea before bedtime were more likely to go to sleep earlier than those who don't drink tea. All right. To me, when I read that, the data showed that people who drink a cup of tea before bedtime, they're more likely to go to sleep earlier. I can recognize that that's a generalization. You're saying that this group of people, they tend to do this, right? That's a generalization. All right, so the question is, what type of study is this? Is this an experiment where we controlled things, or is it a study where we just looked at people and what they did? In this case, they took a random sample of adults and we just asked them about their bedtime habits. That's an observational study. Some of them said they drank tea, some of them didn't. It doesn't matter. We didn't control it. That's what an observational study is. You observe what's happening. An experiment would have been like, we're going to give this group tea before bed, and we're not going to give that group tea. All right, so try to do the second one here on your own. Maybe pause the video right now. Another study took a group of adults and randomly divided them into 2 groups. One group was told to drink tea every night for a week, while the other was not. Researchers then compared when each group fell asleep. This would be an experiment, right? We purposely assign treatments, right? The treatments in this case being one group would get tea, and the other group was told not to drink tea. Okay, problem number 2, next page. Social media and happiness. A student randomly assigned volunteers to one of 2 groups. One group was directed to use social media as they usually do. One group was blocked from social media sites. The researchers looked at which group tended to be happier. Okay, so the students, in this case, or the study, they randomly assigned volunteers to one of 2 groups. And then one group was directed to use media and the other was not. All right, so we're telling the people what to do. That's an experiment. These 2 things are the treatments. Right, using social media or not. At the end, I'm just kind of giving you some vocab here. they looked at which group tended to be happier. So at the end, that's what we're trying to measure, right? We're trying to see, okay, how happy were they? That within experiments we can call response variable. It's a thing at the end that we're trying to measure. If you guys remember from earlier units, we have explanatory variable, which is like your x, and you have response variable, which is like your y. Okay, so next one, if you want to pause it and try it on your own, go ahead. Another study took a random sample of people and examined their social media habits. Each person was classified as either a light, moderate, or heavy social media user. The researchers looked at which groups tended to be happier. So again, we examined their social media habits. This is like we observed what their social media habits are. So this is an observational study. Based on what they were, then we just said, okay, you're a light one, you're a moderate one, or you're a heavy one. But we didn't control that. Okay, the next 4 questions, I would like you guys to try on your own, and I will put what the answers are. What I will say with this is you should remember what a response variable is and what an explanatory variable is. Remember, a response variable, this is what you measure after the study or experiment. Like your y variable. And the explanatory variable, this is your independent variable, this is your x. This is what you change during or before the study or experiment. Okay, so hopefully that helps you with these. Here's number 3. Here is number 4. Here's number 5. And here's number 6.